All right, good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the place in which we work and study is situated within the traditional unceded lands of the Kanekahaga or Mohawk peoples, part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. There's also a strong presence, historic presence of the Anishinaabes peoples in what is now known as the Greater Montreal area. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, has long been and continues to be a gathering place for many First Peoples from all directions. We'd like to honor and thank the traditional custodians of this land and strive to work for the success of future generations. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Goldberg. I am a teacher in the English department and the coordinator of this year's symposium. On behalf of the Vanier College English department, I would like to welcome you to Whose Freedom? Art, Text, and Expression in the Public Domain, our 10th annual symposium. During this three-day event, we are presenting a wide variety of speakers, performers, activists, and writers who will be exploring the impact of language and voice. We'll be asking some tough questions, such as whose voice deserves to be listened to and to be amplified? What are the consequences of pushing aside those stories we don't want to hear? And how can language be used as a tool to empower or to imprison? This event would not be possible without the support of numerous collaborators within the college. Thus, the Symposium Organizing Committee would like to thank the Faculty of General Education, the Faculty of Arts, Business, and Social Science, Vanier's Director General and Academic Dean, Vanier's Communication Office, the Vanier College English Department, SCI, Vanier's Indigenous Studies Program, Student Services, VTV, our many speakers and performers, and of course, you, our wonderful audience. Before I reintroduce our next speakers, I'd like to ask you to refrain from recording this session out of respect for our guests. When possible, we are going to provide recordings of these sessions to the larger Vanier community in the coming days. Also, there'll be time for a Q&A after the talk. So if you'd like to hear more from our guests, feel free to use that Q&A button at the bottom to send us a message so we know what questions you want to ask. You can send those messages throughout the talk, but we'll be addressing them during the Q&A at the end. All right, here we go. Our next speaker for today's symposium. The Politics of Comedy, featuring Jess Solomon and Iman El-Husseini. Jess and Iman are the El Solomons, a married Jewish-Palestinian lesbian comedy couple who, after years of performing solo, decided to add yet another challenge to their relationship, a duo act. Now they tell jokes about one another in front of each other, a sacrifice they must make for their fans. For our symposium, they will be performing some jokes, but they'll also be talking about a more serious issue, how to talk about serious issues through the lens of comedy. This isn't another talk about how hard it is to tell jokes anymore. Instead, they're going to be talking about how they navigate difficult, complicated, and political topics through comedy. Please welcome to our symposium, Jess Solomon and Iman El-Husseini.
Yay!
Here we are.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. You saw us earlier. Thank you to Matt and Vanier for having us and
absolutely.
for that beautiful introduction. So now you know that we are a Jewish, Palestinian, Muslim, lesbian married couple, and that's what we're up to.
That's it?
Yeah, it was, as you can imagine, a very tiny wedding, very small. It was just me, her, and a UN peacekeeper. That was the whole party. I moved into her place. She didn't want me there, but I moved in anyway, you know how we do. All right.
Well, it's a
Yes.
beautiful love story. She makes me go through checkpoints in my own apartment.
Mhm.
I like to be oppressed in the streets and in the sheets. That's my thing.
That's your kink.
So these are the type of jokes, right?
These are some of the
A taste of the jokes.
A taste of the kind of jokes we do and our approach to talking about hot button issues in comedy.
Yeah.
And mostly
Very
it's the
cleavagey
hottest,
today.
it's
Sorry
the
about that.
hottest button of all.
Yeah.
You know, Israel, Palestine. And it's become really from a personal place, mostly. That's how we approach political jokes, autobiographical.
Right.
It's just our life, and that provides something of a cover.
Of course. It's
Yeah.
funny because it's true. That's where the expression comes from.
It started with us, and you coined it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Right. We're also,
Well, our comedy, we also love to talk about we love to entertain first, but we also want to leave you with something to think about. So it's like
Yeah.
teaching. We're
Right.
basically professors.
Like fun professors
Yeah.
where people drink alcohol in class.
Exactly. We're also Canadian.
I mean, I don't think, yeah, you really, with comedy, you really want to sell it as funny first and not go from having a message first, which was a mistake I
No.
made early in comedy.
Well, that's what politicians are all about.
Right.
Politicians, it's information first and then maybe funny.
Maybe.
And that doesn't work. Nobody likes them. Comedians, it's the reverse.
Yeah.
It's funny, entertaining first. And that way,
Mhm.
when you say something in a funny way,
Yeah.
people digest it easier.
Well, yeah, because laughter is a physical response that is hard to control.
Exactly.
So if you make them laugh, they can't really deny that there's something true, something funny. It's funny because it's true. That's what you,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because fake laughter is very noticeable.
Is it?
You could tell
I'll
right
take
away
it. I will
somebody's
take
fake laughing.
Yeah.
But that's
You-
why I think comedy is such a powerful tool. Like my parents, for instance, when they realized that I wasn't going to become a doctor
Mhm.
because I can't even smell a hospital, it makes me sick.
But thank you to our healthcare workers.
Oh yeah, you guys are heroes just because of the smell of the hospital. Like the fact that you're able to survive that, that's huge to me.
Okay.
And then of course, everything putting your life on the line and all of
Also,
that stuff, that's really,
Yeah.
but the
But, okay.
heroic thing.
Right.
Initially. So my parents realized that I wasn't going to become a doctor. So they settled for the next best thing, the next Prime Minister of Canada.
That's what their hopes were. Yeah.
That's it. So my dad especially really wanted me to become a politician. I'm like, no, first of all, I'd be caught in a scandal like every 2 seconds. So I settled for the other best thing,
Mhm.
which is comedian, where I
Right.
could be political and well-liked,
Right.
kind of well-liked.
Mostly.
Well-liked.
I mean, you do have a very, a good diplomatic approach to dealing with people attacking your identity or questioning
Sure.
whether Palestinians exist. And we can
get into it.
We can get into some of those stories.
But we'll tell you how
But
we win people over.
One thing we do is that, especially we live in the US now, but we're Canadian, we're from Montreal, actually.
We are.
Yeah,
That's why we're hot.
that's why we're hot. And I didn't know if you were gonna do your joke about Canadian stuff, but
I will.
I will,
mean,
I will say that, talking about being Canadian in the US, we could still do political jokes, but it is a nice cushion because Canada is extremely popular in the US. I don't know if you guys know that. Maybe you've received some marriage proposals during the Trump administration. I mean, nobody ever knew much about Canada before, but now, they know who our prime minister is, and it's just because he's hot and the bar is so low. I say anything in the US. I mess with people all the time. Sometimes I have the host introduce me as the queen of Canadian comedy. People don't know. There's no way for them to know. They have to assume. #1 album on iTunes Canada. They can't check.
Because they only have access to American iTunes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually the queen of Montreal comedy.
Okay.
So
Well, Bill Brownstein said that.
yeah. So yeah, definitely. We live in New York City now, so we miss healthcare and kindness. And it's
Mhm.
true that Canada is very popular and New
Mhm.
Yorkers are so hard to impress, but they love Montreal specifically. They get so excited about Montreal when I tell them I'm from Montreal. I think it's because we have a reputation of being a party city. We're famous for our strip clubs. You could touch the strippers. Apparently that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But I'm also Muslim. I'm Palestinian and a Muslim. So I can't help but wonder, how would strip clubs be in a Muslim country? Some people get depressed at this joke. Would it be the opposite of here?
Mhm.
Women start off naked and slowly put on layers of clothing. People throw coins and stones at them. I don't know. So this is how we bring people in
Mhm.
with the Canadian, we
Canadian
lure them
stuff.
in, and then I just drop the Muslim stuff.
Yeah, and
again,
then
that's
then
it.
it's really just sort of push-pull kind of thing,
Oh
right?
no, Club Super Sex burned down on Saturday.
I
That's
saw,
very sad.
I did see that. I didn't want to tell you. I thought you would.
I'd be so sad. It's a Montreal landmark.
Do you know what? I didn't realize it burned down. I just thought it had closed.
Well, that's how businesses close down in Montreal. They always burn down. We can't just close down regular. It has to be like a fire.
It's someone who wants to build condos.
Yeah.
So if you guys are keeping track, just to, keep everybody on the same page, if you have a scorecard, we are a Jewish, Muslim, Palestinian, lesbian, Canadian married couple, also intervaccine, Moderna, Pfizer. How do we make it work? Everybody wants to know, right?
I'm the Pfizer, if
yeah.
you're wondering, which I have a superiority complex about.
Mhm,
Sorry, she has Moderna. I walk
Yeah.
around the apartment like, you look like you have a fever. Are you sure you're vaccinated?
Yeah. So, a little bit of vaccine material, a little relatable, and then we get back into it.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm originally Palestinian.
Yeah.
Right. And I think comedy is very important for exposure.
Yes.
So for instance, when I started doing comedy in Montreal in 2006, one of the first radio interviews I did, the radio host asked me where I was originally from. And I said, Palestine. And he said, ooh, that's controversial. Ooh, that's edgy. So
That's
my
edgy.
identity is edgy. Just saying where my parents come from, where where my roots are from, that was too much for the radio host. And I am originally Palestinian. I do feel like my people are a very unique minority group, very unique ethnic group. I feel like we're the only people who get excited when a racist person tells us to go back to our country. It's like, hey, why don't you go back to your country? It's like, oh my God, thank you so much, sir. He thinks we have a country. That is so nice. Thank you. Free Palestine. This is why I haven't been on American television yet, everybody. But you know who has? This Jew right here.
Okay.
She's been on Jimmy Fallon. I don't know if you guys seen it.
That was a high point for sure in the career. But I will say that, yes, there are consequences, obviously, to speech and to talking about being critical of Israel in particular in comedy, or asserting, Palestinian statehood or identity or culture, all of that. And I guess it's a balance. We feel like it's important to represent our beliefs and advocate in a certain way for what we think is important, but it doesn't come without some
consequence.
Well,
there's a cost to it for sure.
We did an interview for CNN that they pre-taped. I think we gave them like an hour of material,
family photos, just a history of how we met,
all this stuff. They were going to cut into 5 minutes, which they could have cut it into anything, and then it just never aired. It just disappeared. And
it was just in the heat of the last war too, which things are so sensitive, especially in America, because America is such an ally, like unconditional ally to Israel. It's so much harder. It's hard in general in the Western world to criticize Israel, but in America, it's like another level.
Yeah. So sometimes
CNN didn't even
when they don't explain, when they don't explain like why something didn't make it to air, it just kind of disappears. Usually they don't tell you why it is, but it's necessary.
Well, they never want that documented, that, we didn't want to because we didn't like the side that you stood with.
Right.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Although we weren't like blatant, we were still our first, we want coexistence and we want peace and we want all of that stuff. But if we're not like diehard supporters of Israel, then forget about it.
Yeah. Sometimes there's somebody lower down that gets excited about doing something with us, and then someone further up the chain just cancels it.
Yeah.
But
that's why it's important for me to keep doing stand-up. Like as much as I want to retire, I've been doing this since, like I said, 15 years. I'm ready to retire, but I can't because I feel it's so important for people to see Palestinians. I go into small towns sometimes where people have never met an Arab in real life, never mind a Palestinian in real life. So I'm like, it's my duty to do this for as long as I live, unfortunately.
I could quit comedy and it wouldn't make any difference.
It's not true. You still have.
I'm the only Jewish comedian.
I'm
the only gay Jewish comedian. There's so many gay Jews. Anyway, at least over here. But it's true that there's sometimes you're the very first Palestinian anybody meets, and they've definitely never, you not only change people's perceptions with your jokes, but also they don't usually imagine that you would be so cleavagey.
I mean, I can barely keep my chest
I know.
in my
This
shirt
is, yeah, this
sitting
is
down
wow,
here, and I'm not
okay.
doing it on purpose.
Yeah. We have had a couple of shows where things have gotten dicey.
Oh, totally.
Where, because, you know, in many cases in comedy, you can switch between topics, you know, let's say you feel like people are really reacting or relating to a certain kind of joke. But when we do our duo act, if the people are not, if they don't like who we are as a starting point, that we're gay, that we're a Jewish Palestinian couple, it can be very difficult,
Of course,
to navigate that.
I just don't know why they would show up to that, because we're very clearly in our introduction.
Sometimes
all of the things
people
that we
don't
are.
research what they're going to see.
Right.
Although, yeah, we did a show at, we've done some shows at Jewish community centers that have been great, but we did one in particular on the Upper West Side in New York. And a lot of the audience just got up and left.
Yeah.
And they tried to
Blame it on not speaking
they
English.
were like, no,
But they seemed a little too angry.
they're
not just speaking English.
like, I think we know the difference between people that don't speak English and Israelis that do speak English.
Yeah.
And are just not into it.
Right. I mean, and don't even get us started, because we haven't gotten invited to any like Islamic community centers.
To be fair, of the religions.
Of all the religions, at least we get invited to Jewish events.
There's a lot of range
Yes.
in the Jewish community.
From Reform to the other, what was the
Oh, it's
extreme?
Reconstructionist synagogue fundraiser we did in Colorado, where I didn't know what Reconstructionist was, and I wanted to get a sense of the audience, and they said, we don't use pronouns when we talk about God, and I was like, perfect.
This is
our crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no invites by any Islamic centers at all.
Mhm.
I mean,
We do tend to get so much more. So
my fan base is closeted Muslims.
that's true.
I get a lot of support in my DMs, but
Mhm.
no public support.
Yes, that's right. And also, you know, we have performed in, you know, obviously regular comedy clubs.
Yes.
Well, we performed separately. And I mean, when I have when it's a Jewish person that reacts badly, it's hard for me to maintain my cool and be diplomatic and be funny in my response, because my underlying anger is so real.
Sure.
You know,
It's like how I get
and
mad with
you
the
get-
Muslim community
Mhm.
of just like, FYI, you're burning in hell, by the way. You know, and I can't believe that once I argued with somebody, Just for Laughs had posted a video of my first gala, just a clip of my first gala, and in 2017. And I had so many hateful comments under that video. But the main thing was basically like a lot of Muslims being like, you can't call yourself Muslim and gay, which like
Right.
roll my eyes. But I ended up arguing with one person back and forth for like
I'm always trying to stop you.
2
I'm like,
hours.
it's not worth it.
2 hours until I found out that the kid was 17 years old. I was like, what did I spent all of this time arguing.
not.
I mean, I guess a lot of you are 17 years old, but and I'm not saying it's not worth arguing with you, but it's just, it was a kid. What I'm saying, it was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think the argument was like pretty good. It's not like it was hateful between us. It was just like a discussion, but it just took so long
Right.
to get through. And I
Mhm.
don't know if I got through to that person, but just the idea of being so judgmental and so like, you're a 17-year-old who thinks that you know the religion better than I do, or you could be a spokesperson for God and tell me how I identify, is just completely nuts. But
Well, I think that's everybody's people who are religious in general feel like they're meant to say the word of, well, we don't, you know.
to spread the word, but it's like,
Yeah.
you can't be judgmental. That's the number one thing. Like you're actually going to burn in hell for being so judgmental and thinking that you know that I'll burn in hell for my lifestyle.
So
I'm getting mad now.
I know you're already getting mad.
Yeah.
We have a joke about Passover. I say that it's my favorite holiday with my Palestinian wife. It's when Jews, we sit around the Seder table and we tell the story of how we escaped the Pharaoh in Egypt, while my wife whispers in my ear,
Let my people go.
and it was on TikTok, and I guess there's a whole Haram police,
Yes.
a whole group of religious Muslims that got into the comments, and between them they had this whole theological discussion about whether or not you should come, onto the comment section and say that you can't be gay and Muslim,
Right.
and other people saying, well, actually the Quran says you shouldn't be judging, and and there was like the progressive religious argument was like, it's their choice to burn in hell if they want.
Yeah. It's not for you to say.
Yeah, and it was so funny, and to TikTok's credit, because everybody is young, not one person, and this is very rare on the internet, said women aren't funny. So deep discussion,
Huge.
theological about Islam.
Yeah.
Very interesting,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Which brings us to
Yes.
our relationship. Well, before we actually met, I put on a show in Montreal
Mhm.
called Kosher Jokes for the Holidays, because when I worked,
No, we had met, but we hadn't.
we weren't together as a
We
couple.
weren't
I
in
mean,
a couple. Yeah.
and this show was a hit, and I did it out of a genuine display of how Jewish and Muslim comedians on the scene in Montreal were so drawn to each other. It was like one night I was working at Comedy Works, and every corner I looked at, there was a Jewish and Muslim comedian just like talking to each other. I'm like, I have to show people how we're naturally drawn to each other if we're exposed to each other.
Mhm.
So let me put this holiday show together, because what do we have in common? We both sadly do not celebrate Christmas. This is probably why we're fighting. Maybe if we celebrated Christmas, we'd have no war. But anyway,
Mhm.
so I put on the show Kosher Jokes for the Holidays. I rented a big theater, the Jesus Theater, because I'm like, obviously we'll do this in a church or a former church. And
It's so crazy how we both married outside of the faith and still know Christmas. Like, what are the odds?
I know.
Upset the family, and it's like literally all we've ever wanted.
Yeah.
And then this was you acting on wanting to have a Christmas of some kind.
Well, exactly. I'm like, we're all, lonely. It's December 23rd, December 24th or something that I did it. And the show sold out. And we were like a bunch of nobodies. This was early in my career. Had just come on the scene, but it got like so much media attention. It was so successful. It turned into a bigger show, 3-city tour. And then in Montreal, we went from one show to like 5 shows, although it was at a comedy club, so smaller venue, but still.
Mhm.
So there was like hunger of seeing these people, like these communities sitting by each other
Being in
and
the same
laughing
room,
together.
laughing, yeah.
And why
Already.
did I bring that up?
I'm not sure.
Because, oh
Because
yeah,
exposure.
so exposure, but because my whole thing was always to like, let's bring our communities together and see what's in common and unite all sides to be together and to laugh together. We did succeed at one thing.
Yes.
We united all sides to hate us equally.
Yes, we did bring people together, at least on the internet.
That's it.
Yeah, to find
Yeah.
common ground. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to share with you some of our favorite internet comments.
Yes, which I love to call love notes.
Our fan mail.
Our fan mail love
So
notes.
let's see if we can
Share
get
the
this
screen with you.
going. If I put my PowerPoint thing up, you guys, Matt, chime in and let me know if you guys can see this.
We can't right now. Are you
Okay.
share screen on the bottom?
Okay, hold on. I just made that share screen. Okay, let me go back to Zoom. Oh, I have to press it. Share screen.
That's
Okay.
There you
And then
go.
this,
And share.
hold. Okay,
Can you see
is that going?
This is working, yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, great. So
So,
this also to show you guys that we have a cartoon account on Instagram called The L Solomons, which is based on our marriage and everyday interactions together and with the world. So
another
wanna follow
way to bring people
communicate.
on board or
Get more
cartoon
get more fan mail.
illustrations. Yeah, it's our friend Jesse Brown who illustrates it. He's so talented. So this is our first one.
Okay, this one, George Jacob. Which one is male or husband?
Mhm.
And I know that this one seems ignorant, but it's actually very woke, because George Jacob is not assuming that, we identify as male or female, and also husband. It's actually, that's my like right
That's
there.
Iman's like.
Yeah.
Okay, Jose Mendez, a pair of perverts, which, after being married for
Almost 7 years.
7 years, together for 10 years, I like that he thinks
We're still doing
we're
it.
still doing it, which we do.
We do.
When our phones are charging, that's when
Right.
the magic happens. Oh yeah, this level of in your face political correctness is nauseating. I just feel like if your marriage isn't a virtue signal at this point in 2021, you're canceled, Puke emoji, shit emoji, puke emoji, and then someone tagged my sister.
Yeah. Oh, and this one, okay, Robert, one of them is a Montreal girl, and she does great stand-up.
Which one?
Good for them. Only in Israel can people express themselves freely. Unfortunately, not in Israel.
This did not happen in Israel.
No.
No.
And I don't think gay marriage or interfaith marriage are legal there.
I don't, probably not.
No.
Maybe unions between Jews, but okay.
That's it.
Gay Jews.
Gay
Yeah.
Jews.
Okay. This is how starts the end of Israel. Sad face emoji. This one was written by Israel.
This is the comedian I saw in BK. I told you about. Which one?
We need more
I
specificity.
know, that's the problem with being gay.
Yeah. What?
No, like not knowing which one they're talking about. I guess that works for straight people too. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay, Blake Benedict. No one is going to watch it. It's going to get canceled during the pilot. I love this one because he thinks we have a show.
Yes.
This is great.
Thank you, Blake.
Yes.
Thank you for your belief in us. Jess better sleep with one eye open and hide all the knives in the kitchen. I mean,
I did say checkpoints.
I do make
you.
you go through a metal detector before bed.
That's it.
And hide the knives. I mean, more like hide the chocolate. Am I right, ladies? All right.
Poor white European girl. She looks so terrified, like a spooked deer. LOL.
Well, that is what I always look like. Spooked deer is my resting face.
Yeah.
Sick duo, both enveloped in darkness. They need God's light.
This one got a lot of likes.
This one is going on our next show poster, I think. And here we've got sick duo, Emmanuel Akpera, both enveloped in darkness, Emmanuel Akpera. They need God's light, Emmanuel Akpera. This is our Christmas card.
This is what we're
This is
sending
it,
out.
yeah.
If you guys want to send us your emails. Oh yeah, this is bringing us together. Fish tacos are kosher and halal. That's a nice message of peace.
That's a dirty joke about lesbians,
Right.
and we'll take it. In the Old Testament, God said they were to be stoned to death. In the New Testament, Jesus says he gives them a reprobate mind because of what they do. God hates sodomy. And, sometimes in the comment section, a hero pipes in, like this guy who said, lesbians don't necessarily practice sodomy, but we do.
And this is how we get more love notes. So
And
please
this is how we
feel
get more love
free
notes.
to
How do-
send us.
Oh wait, we got to go back to
There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. We're back to regular screen. So that's our love notes section.
Yes.
We did bring a lot of different people together.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should do any more of our edgy jokes.
Well, it's not about edgy jokes. What I want to say is that
Mhm.
we haven't been canceled because a lot of comedians now complain.
But we're also
about-
not famous.
We're not famous, but we haven't gotten canceled because a lot of comedians right
But
now.
has anyone really gotten canceled?
That's what I want to say. Is
Sorry.
a lot of comedians want to complain. No, I
Oh,
agree
yeah.
with you. I made that face like I'm rolling my eyes at comedians that complain about
Oh.
getting canceled.
Okay.
Nobody has gotten canceled. What we love about this day and age in comedy is that things are getting more progressive. There are more sides to one story. Comedy, when I first started 15 years ago, was like a safe haven for male comedians, specifically white male comedians. But now there are a lot more voices.
Mhm.
People are a lot more progressive, open. Social media has connected us together. There's so many, it's not like when I grew up with, you had the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, and that's it. Now it's like
Right.
the truth is available, accessible. We found that a lot of a lot of horrible things that were happening and were covered up, like Black Lives Matter, the movement, the Me Too movement, Palestinian human rights. I mean, the fact that we even allowed to discuss Palestinian human rights is like unheard of again 15 years ago. So a lot of comedians who were at a point of privilege for so long are complaining about
not being able to
express themselves freely, to talk about how much,
Right.
you know, God knows what they talked about, and like humping the stool on stage and, you know, all of these things, and they're getting disappointed. But I think this is the golden age of comedy. We're finally getting to a point where we could freely talk about our beliefs and just growth in general.
Yes. And as Iman said, there's a lot more avenues for comedy. There's less gatekeepers, obviously.
Yeah.
And there are a lot more voices, Palestinian voices on the news, and the discourse has definitely shifted to a certain degree. And I think that's due to Iman doing stand-up comedy.
It's just me starting 15 years ago. That's the whole point. I opened up the doors for everybody, non-binaries,
Non-binary.
Palestinians. I'm just,
Iman.
no, I'm kidding. What I'm
Iman is-
saying is that I'm pro cancel culture,
Mhm.
because I do think that progress is important. And I do think that a lot of things were not acceptable and were very long time in comedy. And I'm just happy that we're telling people to stop being lazy and to actually write with intention and a message, and not just useless, easy jokes that weren't politically correct for so long, and we've accepted it for such a long time. So,
Well,
yay, cancel culture.
Okay.
I've yet to
I wasn't
see-
even interested in talking about cancel culture specifically today.
I just wanted to
but-
talk about comedy in general,
Okay.
and just say that, you know, I know that this is a main discussion that everybody's talking about, the latest Chappelle special, which I thought was
Okay,
very.
we don't need to.
That's it. We're not going to get into it.
No,
But I
I-
just wanted
yeah.
to like bring the whole,
Yeah, and you did a
comedy
great
and the
job.
progress
Yeah, and
it.
and the last
and I
thing
just get so
that
angry.
will, I
and
know,
worked up.
I see that. Before we go to Q&A,
Yeah.
I want to say that when speaking of our personal experience
Mhm.
in trying to stick to our principles and, you know, do the jokes that we believe in, sometimes it's a balance, and sometimes you find that you just don't have the energy and you let certain jokes go because you just don't want to deal with awkwardness and tension, or, you know, love notes on the internet or whatever. And so that does happen. But it does feel that on balance, people are a lot more educated, and the discourse, especially around Israel, Palestine, but also other justice issues, that we all realize that we perhaps didn't get a complete picture of what was
Right.
going on in history, and that we had a lot of blind spots in our education system that maybe you guys don't have as much anymore. That's shifting, and we do make an effort to, regardless of consequences,
To
in
stick to what we
general,
believe in.
speak, you know, truth to power in as funny a way as possible, where people can't help laughing, and from a personal place, and that we hope that helps us play a small part in moving things forward.
I mean, even on a small level, of just touring the South recently.
Mhm.
We were at Zanies in Nashville, and we had to like think twice about things that we wanted to talk about that we didn't realize, we didn't know how it was going to fly, because we're in Brooklyn, we're in really progressive rooms all the time. So we have a bit more freedom to stick to what we wanted to do. And in Nashville, we were like, hold on, we got to think about this, because not everybody is necessarily liberal in the room.
Mhm.
You know, so it's like every place that you go, you have to revisit these points and see how you could formulate your set in the most effective way, by being
Wow.
as funny as possible and by sticking to what you want to say.
Well, the good thing about the South is that they can be less sensitive about Israel than people in New York,
That's true.
because maybe they're anti-Semitic, and, you know, I'm kidding. All right, you guys, we've been going on long enough, and we have been in this vacuum, not seeing any of you or hearing any of you, although we appreciate the comments. And we're happy to turn it over to Matt to see if you guys have any questions for us.
Thank you, Justin. I liked how it seemed for a moment like you were ending on such a nice note about genteel, so that maybe they're anti-Semitic. Thank you. Yes, we do have time for some questions. If anyone from the audience would like to ask a question, please do send it through the Q&A function, not through the chat function. Got a couple coming in. I, though, being the person who's moderating, will ask the first question. You brought up the way that you do reconfigure or evaluate what jokes you're going to tell given different settings. I wonder if you could talk for a minute just about your process for doing that. Do you run through the entire repertoire of your comedy before you go on? I don't know the level of preparation that goes into a stand-up routine.
So it really depends on the room. We definitely walk into the room, we see what kind of audience it is. We're in the green room, so we talk to comedians, we talk to the person who's going to watch us. In the Nashville case, we were auditioning kind of, and the manager was there. And I think I had my set list prepared with the jokes that I was the most excited about, sprinkled with some material where I felt like this would impress the manager and the audience as much as possible, but I had to revisit my opener, because let's say my opener is about me being Canadian and bragging about being Canadian. See, it's not even like a Palestinian thing. It's bragging about being Canadian. I'm like, oh, as you know, as people in the South, they might not be as excited about Canada if I'm kind of talking badly about America. So maybe I shouldn't open with this. If I really want to do my Canadian stuff, maybe I'll put it a bit later and open with something a bit more mainstream so I don't alienate the crowd. So that's sort of restructuring.
I rode in on a horse and wore cowboy boots just to make sure that
Thank you.
there is a fair bit of reading the room and trying to get them on board so that then you could kind of take them where they are. And all of you have seen this. There are certain comedians that do jokes that you're like, how are they getting away with this? And it's just because they're so good at what they're doing and they do it with such confidence, and they've built the more difficult jokes into a place in their set where they've already won an audience to be over with some lighter stuff. And I mean, when Iman, a lot of things have changed though, because when I first started, I used to have a whole song and dance about, at the time, I had a lot of bisexual material, and this was 12 years ago, and there wasn't a lot of people talking about that, and people didn't really, it almost sucked the room out of the air. Suck the air out of the room, because sometimes somebody gets on stage and let's say they're a very, large person, overweight or whatever. And they have, I don't know what the correct word is now. I'm just realizing it with younger people sometimes, but anyways, a large person. And that, typically they'll say something to address that, because they can feel that the audience is, waiting for them to acknowledge it or something. And that was always, it was almost like you had to, there's certain things physically that people sometimes you need to kind of get out of the way, or you used to have to, I know you didn't want to say elephant in the room because then I was talking about this large person. And then
no, but that's not how you meant. Yeah.
But for me, I bring up, even at the time, that I was Jewish, or that my mom was from Peru, or that I was, queer, whatever. And none of these things were expected. So I had to have another joke behind it to deal with that. And it's been years now that I haven't had to do that, really, definitely not. I won't make, I'll just go straight into jokes about my wife and whatever. And I don't feel the need to cushion anything anymore. And audiences don't care. They're just okay, your wife, but, and then you just, you used to have to do a lot of material before even talking about being
at the
Arab,
beginning, because all comedy club owners would always tell me don't talk about the Arab stuff, that's going to turn people off. Don't talk about this. Start with something that brings everybody together. And then you could draw, and for a long time, for at least 3 years, I wouldn't talk about being Middle Eastern at all, until once I was like bombing at a show in Montreal at like this bar show, and it was on September 11th, which is my parents' wedding anniversary, and I just like said it like this, and the audience erupted, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I have to talk about, like the true things about my life that's like unique and whatever, instead of like Starbucks and dieting and whatever that I did for so
Men
long.
and women.
You know? Yeah.
Mitsumi Takahashi
Yeah.
reading the most. That was one of my one of your old jokes that always made me laugh.
Well, yeah, that
Her reading the description of a criminal that's wanted.
Yeah.
And it's like, so your type?
Yeah. Like 6'2", redhead, blue eyes, 180 pounds. I'm like, Mitsumi, I'll help you find this guy. He's so my type.
Go watch Iman's comedy now. It's on YouTube from whenever.
Yeah.
It looks like it was filmed in the 80s, but it's actually from
It was like 2013 or 2014 or something.
Canadian,
yeah.
you know.
We have this as a question in the Q&A, so I want to get to it. We're right next to this. How did you get into comedy? What was your entry point? What hooked you into this scene?
Honestly, for me, it was the lack of what do you say, presentation of Arabs in the media. Representation of Arabs in the media. I always, True Lies is a movie that really traumatized me.
Oh my God, it was one of my, I know, it was always one of my favorite movies until you started talking about it. I was like,
hated it.
That really doesn't hold up.
I know. I just like came back. We escaped war, my family in Kuwait, because of like the Iraq invasion. And then I thought coming to Canada, I'm like, everybody's going to love us. Arabs are so cool. We make such good food. Our culture is amazing. And it's like, no, nobody likes us. Nobody likes Muslims. I went to see True Lies. I was like, this is terrible. And the people that are playing the roles of Arabs are like not even speaking proper Arabic, aren't real Arabs. Like it was just a nightmare.
And when you say roles, you mean playing terrorists? Playing terrorists,
of course, because was there any other role?
No.
Halal cart owner,
cab driver.
Terrorist, and that really, and I saw how powerful the media was, and it was also not like the greatest student, and noticed that being funny really helped me get away with a lot with teachers and getting in trouble and not doing my homework. And this is not a good example for all of you students, but I felt like being funny is like such a powerful thing, and I wanted representation in media. So for me, it was really like a no-brainer. That's what I wanted to do. I loved it. I just thought that you had to be a celebrity to become a comedian, because who wants to listen to like unknown people try to make them laugh, And also Blockbuster at the time, I'm aging myself, but Blockbuster had stand-up comedy VHSs of only celebrities, You're not seeing like an open mic, whatever, of somebody who's not known. But yeah, 15 years ago started it because I wanted more representation in the media, and I'm still not on the big screen.
You're on the Zoom screen.
I am on the Zoom screen.
Iman. Come
on. Jess?
Well, I used to be a war crimes lawyer for the United Nations until I decided it was time to get serious. Is my one liner about that. But I you know what, honestly, and this is going to sound so embarrassing, but the thing that turned me on to comedy when I was working in law was it was sort of the pinnacle of Jon Stewart's impact on the conversation. And that's when if you might, the students might not remember this, but he actually got Tucker Carlson's show on CNN called Crossfire canceled because he said it was hurting America. It was two extremist, pundits from either side going at it. And I was like, wow, comedy could be such a great tool for advocacy. And I didn't know how long it took to get good at comedy. So I was like, I'll just take a couple of years off of law. If I don't have an HBO special and a television show in 2 years, I'll know it's not for me, and I'll head right back to law. No harm, no foul. But anyway, obviously it doesn't work like that. It takes a really long time. And I, politically, you guys all know what's happened. Satire didn't save democracy. Jon Stewart just came back to television now, or Apple TV, but pretty much went upstate and communed with animals on the farm. And Tucker Carlson's been living his best white nationalist life. And when the Muslim ban happened early in Trump's presidency, and all these young lawyers were taking their laptops and they were sitting there on the airport floor at JFK trying to help, really, you know, making a difference. That was one of a few moments where I was like, maybe I did the wrong thing. And also realizing that comedy isn't, you know, you can't start from a point of advocacy if you want to make people laugh. That was my lawyer perspective, but now my brain is fully shifted to, you know, what's funny, and maybe hopefully you end up making some kind of a difference. But things were so far gone here politically that it felt like, comedy wasn't going to be the thing that was going to help us.
Jon Stewart should have never left, I think.
John, I don't know, maybe that was it. Well, anyway, so I'm going to blame my career switch on him.
Thank you. I mean, that almost predicts the next question we've got. Which comedians inspired you when you were starting out? I guess other than Jon Stewart.
I mean, I loved the Ellen special, Here and Now special. I thought it was so funny. That was the first time that I laughed so hard during almost the entire thing. Wanda Sykes too. Eddie Murphy's Raw, I thought was so funny. Not delirious, but Raw. I think those were like the three. I'ma Be Me, Here and Now, Ellen, and Raw, Eddie Murphy were my three. Oh, Cat Williams too. I loved so much.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch. I remember watching Eddie Murphy at, like, you know, I was the older sibling, so if I was introduced to anything, it was by friends that had older siblings, and I remember watching Eddie Murphy's specials like probably before I could really, you know, I should have been. I watched SNL for sure. And comedy, like movie comedies and sitcoms and stuff, but I didn't really, there wasn't a comedian that necessarily fully inspired me to go into stand-up. But since I've been doing stand-up, I'm always inspired by people, and it's one of the reasons we moved to New York is that there's just so many incredible comedians that you get to see all the time, every night. I guess I'd right now say Roy Wood Jr. is someone who I love and who hits a lot of hot button political topics and in a hilarious way. And he has a new special out that came out.
It was so good.
Imperfect Messenger. He's got a couple, but Imperfect Messenger just came out the other night on Comedy Central, and he should be, in my opinion, much more famous. He might be known as he's a correspondent on The Daily Show and been in other things too. It's all about The Daily Show for me, you guys.
Jon Stewart owes you a writing job, I think.
We've got two more questions, but we have time for more. If anyone else would like to send in a question, send it in through the Q&A function. If you're watching in a classroom, ask your teacher really politely to type it up for you or let you onto the keyboard. I don't know if you want to, you've already kind of shut down this question, but I'm going to ask it. We have a student in the room curious what you thought of the Dave Chappelle special and the Dave Chappelle controversy that goes along with it.
Oh,
I think it was so insensitive of him and lazy. And, you know, he's complaining about getting canceled when he made $20 million to shoot that special. I don't know how that's cancellation, but if it is, please cancel me and send me a check of $20 million.
I mean, it's disappointing because Chappelle has always been such a great comic. And is, you know, in particular, obviously, famously for his insights and jokes about racial issues in America. And you know, he left the Chappelle show when he was offered a lot of money to do another season or however many seasons, because he felt that his satire about race was being taken literally by people who were racist, that they were laughing at the stereotype as, you know, being true and not really getting the point. And he didn't like that. And so he took this very principled position that he just would forego all of this money because he felt that the wrong people were laughing. And so it's extra disappointing that in this case, with his weird, I'm going to say, obsession with, in particular, trans people, but the whole rainbow, but especially trans people, he is not concerned about making the wrong people laugh and not interested in listening to what is happening, you know, in the feedback. He's just so resistant of it and not, just thinks that he's like acting like he's some kind of hero for not backing down. And it's not like you can't make funny jokes about the LGBT community, I'd say, even if you are not part of it. But there's a difference between making jokes that are directed at, you know, trans people, where the trans person is not the joke. Like, it's clear to me that for Dave Chappelle, being trans is what's the joke. And that's why it's transphobic. And it's, you know, his level of humor, it's like, these jokes are, you'd see at an open mic, you know, they're not, it's just, he's not being funny. And he is someone who is capable of it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's that, like, whatever, we could speculate about the psychology behind all of it. Sometimes you're like, oh, maybe you're attracted to trans people and you hate that about yourself, or you're just so invested in the power dynamic of the gender binary that you think that this somehow challenges manhood, and that's hitting you in a way where you're reacting. So anyway, these are my thoughts. I just find it so extra disappointing because of who he has always been before these specials. And it's also boring. It's like, you keep talking about the same thing, man, you know?
We have another question, another controversy, this one a little closer to home. How do you feel about the Mike Ward decision? I know you wrote an article about this, Jess, a few years ago. What was your response?
Yeah, so because I mean, I mentioned, and I wasn't just joking about that, I did used to be a lawyer, and obviously I do comedy. Yeah, I wrote an article in a comedy website. So I don't believe the Supreme Court referenced it, even though the majority agreed with me. So still got it. But yeah, I wrote it when the Human Rights Tribunal decision came out. So I think that was in 2016. And basically, anyway, legally, I think that the Human Rights Tribunal did not have jurisdiction, which is what the majority said in the Supreme Court. It was a very close decision, 5-4, finding in favor of Mike Ward. I'm happy that side won out, although it's concerning how close it was, because I don't think that we should have limits on freedom of expression beyond that, you know, that beyond what we already have, which is, you know, hate speech,
which is great that we have that,
defamation.
because America does not have.
Well,
any
yeah,
limits on
I
hate
do
speech.
think that there are, yeah, and you can see how well that's worked out here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you know, this wasn't a case of hate speech.
I think with Mike, it was clearly a joke. I don't think it came from a hateful place. And I'm so glad the court sided with him. Unfortunately, we lost him, and now he's become like an extreme
Well,
right-wing person. But
I mean, it seems that, and
that breaks my heart, because he was such a nice guy.
Yeah, he seems to have had the reaction that a lot of male comics do when they're
Things
called
don't go their
out,
way.
and rather than, well, look, Chappelle's an example, just rather than just doubling down and just moving to the right, you know.
I've been
and
mad at
going to-
Michelle at Chappelle. Sorry to cut you off, since he was on
We
SNL
should call him
saying,
Michelle.
I know, Michelle.
I love that.
Since he hosted SNL when Trump got into power and was like, give him a chance. I was like, what? These guys
I don't know. Something happens when you get that rich.
that much money.
Yeah. I mean,
don't know.
which is, yeah, Mike is not on that level rich, but yeah, I do think Mike now caters to an audience of people probably, and I haven't kept up that much with him because I had to unfollow him, but very, much more right-wing, kind of feeling very victimized rather than sort of taking in. I'm so glad that he fought the case up to the Supreme Court, because I mean, one of the things that bothers me so much about this case is that it gives legitimacy to people who complain about cancel culture and that their freedom of expression is at all being limited, because in every other case, it's not a question of free expression. It's just the marketplace, basically, whether a venue cancels you or doesn't want to have you, or people complain, or, your stuff gets taken down. I mean, unless the state is involved, it's not a case of free expression being suppressed. And in Mike's case, it was the state getting involved, and he was taken to court, and other people could also be taken to court that have less money and, on the basis of speech hurting somebody's feelings effectively. It wasn't even discrimination,
I don't think he was being hateful or even telling people to like pick on this kid at all.
But that was the effect. That was definitely the effect. I'm not it's not a joke I would make. I don't approve of the joke. I don't defend the joke, but it was definitely a joke. It wasn't the case of, somebody who was spreading hate speech and using comedy as an excuse, like Gavin McInnes, pretended that what he was doing was comedy, but he's clearly the leader of a neo-Nazi group. You know what I mean? Like in that case, we
were actually guests on his show.
We don't need to.
I know. Before we found out that he wasn't joking. We thought he was joking, and he was just being
satirical. We just moved to New York. We were saying yes to a lot of things.
And we thought it was satire. I didn't think
we didn't, this was before
anything.
The Proud Boys,
you Trump.
We started the Proud Boys.
We were at the listen, they say, do you want to perform for the insurrectionists? And we were like, is the travel to Washington included?
Yeah.
Do we get hotel?
All right, our final questions are a little less on this political edge. We have someone wondering if you performed at Comedy Store in California.
No.
I have once, but it was like an open mic. It was a small show.
Oh, yeah, not the Comedy Store.
Two shows. I did an Arab show there, an Arab themed show. It wasn't a regular spot, so I can't brag about it. One of them was an open mic in a smaller room, and one of them was like a themed show. Arab themed show, but not a regular spot. So book me if you have connections.
We've been to the Improv. I performed the Improv.
Just at the Improv, yeah.
In LA.
All right. I think we have a few folks, I think, in this chat who are aspiring comics, and
don't do it. Stay in school. It's terrible.
I was going to ask if any inspiration, but I guess that's as good a caution as anything.
Yeah, it's hard. It's if that's the only thing you want to do,
unless I'd say you want to pursue being a comedian in French in Quebec, that is a legitimate career path.
True. You'll make
There's a real industry in Quebec,
in
a way that doesn't exist in Canada or even in the US.
No.
They have a union. They have a red carpeted televised comedy awards show.
Les
Olivier. The media covers them. They have a lot of support. Well, all the arts really in French in Quebec have, built.
Australia is kind of similar too, actually.
I know, but these people aren't.
If you want to move to Australia, if you don't want to do it in Quebec, I'm saying.
Okay, well,
you have those two options. Otherwise, don't do it.
We talked to a Malaysian comedian last night,
or go to Malaysia.
And he says it's he makes more than his wife, who's a doctor.
But that could be like a gender.
He also told me that they don't let Jews in the country.
Or gays.
So not an option for us.
Yeah.
But
Jess and Iman, thank you so much for being here. It's been so great to have you.
Oh,
So
thanks
fun.
for
Thank you
having
so much.
us. Sorry we can't see you guys, but we appreciate you being here virtually somewhere.
Yes, thank you to all of our attendees. Thank you so much, Jess and Iman. We have one more presentation for our audience today. If you're able to make it at 4:10 this afternoon, we have a talk from actor, playwright, multidisciplinary artist Omari Newton entitled The Transformative Power of Art. Omari will be giving a talk on art as a tool for social change, both to empower the individual and to make great shifts within our society. That's from 4 till about 5:30 this afternoon. And then we'll be back tomorrow and Friday with a whole bunch more programming. You can check out that information. It's on the Vanier website. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.